Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, and it is a pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm back in Volusia County. I was there earlier today and I'm back again. And just as an aside, my first 9 years with the district back in the late 80s into the 90s, all of my work centered in Volusia County. So I did regulatory work. So my heart is in Volusia. I love an opportunity to work with the county or any of the cities there. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to give a little bit of background as to why the district is involved. If I can forward this. That's interesting. There we go. Why the district is even involved in landscaping and all the rest, and kind of bring everyone up to date on what's going on with water supply in the region and why we are concerned about overuse of water with landscaping. So I think most of you know we are one of 5 water management districts in the state of Florida, with a boundary of all or part of 18 counties from the state line there all the way south into Indian River and Okeechobee counties. Our mission is to protect the water resources, both for the people of Florida and for the natural, protect them for the natural resources. So again, some of you might be new to Florida, but we get about 54 inches of rain. It feels like we've had it already this year. It's been quite a wet year. We're a little bit above average. We have tremendous prolific surface water, lakes, and rivers, streams, wetland areas, and also we have the largest concentration of springs in the world. So we have prolific water resources, a lot to protect, and also it makes our messaging a lot more difficult when it comes to water conservation. People who move here to Florida are like, why are you even interested in saving water? I've just come from Arizona and you have so much water here. So it's our traditional sources of water are somewhat impaired, and that is why we're looking more closely at how we use water in the future. So hot off the press is our 2020 water use report. For the past actually close to 50 years, since the mid-70s, we have been producing these reports about how much water is being used and who's using the water in our district. And every year this pie chart looks a little different, but for the last several years, the largest piece of the pie is public supply, meaning utility water use, meaning a lot of our residences and a lot of our commercial also. Agriculture being the green area, that changes year to year. In a dry year, you'll see a much larger piece of the pie where ag needs to irrigate a lot more. So the amount of water being used, over 1,000 million gallons per day. It's the first time we've added that comma. So water use is increasing. We are seeing increased efficiency, but we're certainly using more also. So our main area, my main area of focus with regard to water conservation is this blue area, is the area in which I work, public water supply. And then drilling down a little further to residential water use. In Florida, if you have an in-ground automatic irrigation system, we're seeing at least 50% being used outdoors. And if we mentioned we get about 50 plus inches of rain, and we're watering, you can imagine that adds up to a tremendous amount of water on our plants and in our yards. Indoor, I find it pretty interesting. We've seen quite a change over the last 10 years. As we have seen people purchase these highly efficient clothes washers and dishwashers, the largest piece of the pie indoors is now toilets, faucets, and showers. The impact of the EPA Water Sense program has been tremendous. The indoor water use is decreasing all the time. Meanwhile, outdoor water use is increasing. So what we're seeing is overuse of irrigation water. So it's wonderful that we have these automatic in-ground systems, but also they've become a way to waste water. System efficiency of a traditional one of these systems requires 3 main things: efficient design, correct installation, and frequent maintenance. In many, many cases, we see none of those 3 happening And as a result, we're oftentimes putting down 3 to 4 times more water than is actually needed because of efficiency and poor operation of the system. In the average irrigation water use based on research that we've done based on work at UF is we see about 191 gallons per day of potable water for irrigation. That's again, if you have an irrigation system, and sometimes as high as 381 gallons per day of reclaimed water. And that is based upon data from utility billing that has worked with a program out of UF called H2O Save. So significantly more water being used if it's reclaimed. So a lot of times people leave their system on in the automatic setting with no shut-off device, and that is why we're seeing so much of this water being used outdoors. And let me share with you what that looks like across a whole region. Using this tool from UF, H2O Save, they were able to drill down and look at the water use data. And they've done it for many cities around the state, but this is data that was released recently for Gainesville, the utility being GRU. And this is the details of the homes that they looked at. And that's where the 190 gallons of water comes from. You can see in the western part of Gainesville, the darker red colors represent high water use, versus the eastern side of the city, there are fewer irrigation systems. So a big part of understanding how water is being wasted is quantifying how much is being used and where it's being used. Where are the high water users? So what they're seeing in this Gainesville area, the top 25% of water users are using 400 gallons per day per household. And that's on average 59% for irrigation. So in my work with water utilities, there's this tool and other tools like it have been a tremendous resource. So instead of trying to impact the entire service area or talk about landscaping in East Gainesville, they're able to target on the high water users, drill down exactly to those people who are using the water and tailor a message just for them. So some research that we did several years ago now in St. Johns County, we decided we wanted to have a look at what is the best way to save water in your landscape within our automatic irrigation system. So we got 30 high water users from St. Johns County, and we divided them into 3 groups. The first group, we were able to retrofit the automatic timer. They set it to the exact right settings. We fixed leaks and we changed the rain sensor. We gave them everyone a new rain sensor immediately off the bat for basically $150 or so, $110. We saw 10% water savings just from that one action. The second group, then we did those same 3 things and we retrofitted the sprinkler heads to a more efficient one, like the one in this picture. It's called a rotary nozzle. So we had all the same spray nozzles throughout the landscape, no mixing of rotors or sprays. And we saw 11% water savings and a cost being a little bit more. So on average, when we evaluate projects, we look at dollars per 1,000 gallons saved. So the K-gal value on this is very, very low. Then the last group in the study got a pretty big overhaul. We rearranged beds, we increased beds, reduced turf grass, changed the heads, changed the sprinkler, fixed the leaks, and added the rain sensors. And we saw 22% water savings. So this was, but the cost was probably prohibitive. It still doesn't look like a lot per K-gal. This would get funded if it came to us as a cost share project, but it was a lot more. The low-hanging fruit is definitely getting to the homeowner, fixing the timer, fixing the rain sensor, and dealing with leaks. Very easy, not expensive. So we learned a lot from that study. What I'm learning from utilities in Central Florida is that they can save up to 25–30% from this homeowner interaction. So here are some tips that we have then for irrigation specifically. So knowing whether you are odd or even so that you can abide by the irrigation restrictions. So in Florida, we in the summertime, you are allowed to water 2 days a week. In the wintertime, you are only supposed to water 1 day a week. A lot of people moving here aren't aware of these rules. I'll take responsibility. We need to ramp up our advertisement of this also and get the word out to more people. So basically, if you're an even address, it's going to be Sunday and Thursday. Odd addresses, it is Saturday and Wednesday. So it's based on when the time changes, and also you're not allowed water between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. every day. So again, just abiding by these irrigation restrictions, which were based upon the amount of water turfgrass needs to thrive in Florida. And I don't mean water these days all year long, only when it's not raining. So we have an exemption for reclaimed, new plants, micro-irrigation, chemical applications. So being aware of the irrigation restrictions, huge impact. Checking your sprinkler system to make sure it's working efficiently. As you know, a lot of times our irrigation runs at nighttime or early in the morning, so we don't actually see it. So running it at maybe once every other month, so you can actually see the heads pop up, and making sure you don't have any leaks and changing out heads that might be leaking. Some additional points to that, understanding your irrigation system, is if you don't have an irrigation design drawing, what you might want to do is get your lot drawing of your landscape and your house and draw in your irrigation zones once you turn on the system. So that you know which zones are for turf grass, which are for beds, and you can adapt them based on the type of material that they're irrigating. Also, if possible, separating turf grass from your beds, from your landscape beds. Turf grass needs more water in the dry season than your landscape beds. Hopefully you have plants that are well established. They don't need to be watered as much. And then one of the fundamentals in irrigation design is head-to-head spacing. So despite what your irrigation repair person may be telling you, irrigation sprinkler heads are designed to water from one head all the way to the next head, not halfway. The picture in the top right shows you what good uniformity means. Good uniformity means water is spraying from head to head. So you're putting down an even amount of water in the turfgrass root zone, versus poor uniformity, which would be like this top picture where heads are spread out a little more. Very common mistake. And it means that a certain area of the turfgrass is getting very little water. So what does the average homeowner do? They increase watering for that one tiny area in their yard, and then they're getting too much water to the root zone of the rest of it. And that's when you get dollarweed, fungal problems, and you have to apply chemicals. So there's this kind of constant cycle of pretty much a disaster for our natural systems if the water is running off laden with chemicals. Another thing to be aware of is pressure. You can now buy sprinkler heads that have built-in pressure regulation. So if your yard looks like the one in the bottom right, that means the pressure is too high, the water is just evaporating off, and you're paying your utility bill to add atmospheric moisture to make things even more humid in Florida. So you can buy pressure regulated heads, or at the zone, you can add pressure regulation for the whole zone. So in the WaterStar program, we require all of these things: head-to-head spacing, pressure regulation, separation of turf grass from planting beds, and of course, design drawings for the irrigation system. So what we're trying to do with that program is get homes and their systems to be built properly, installed properly, so at least they're capable of functioning to save water. A few other, for the overachievers in the audience, a few other little things to be aware of are sprinkler heads need to rise above the turf grass. I think I know we've owned this house now for over 20 years, and over time, St. Augustine grass builds up thatch, and sometimes your heads get sunken below it. The standard height for St. Augustine is a 6-inch sprinkler head. The picture in the top right is a 6-inch head, so that it can rise above and actually water all of the grass. Position the sprinklers to water the plants and not the streets or sidewalk. No matter how long you water cypress mulch, you will not grow a cypress tree. So look at where your heads are spraying. Is it the turf grass, driveways, or whatever? Especially if it's reclaimed water. You are not supposed to irrigate sidewalks with reclaimed because of the water quality concerns from it. Fix leaks, broken heads, sprinkler heads, goes without saying. You can assume 5 to 7 years a head probably needs to be changed out, that nozzle, or at least the filter in it changed out. So maybe go ahead and invest in hiring a company to do a retrofit of your landscape at that point. Rainfall shut-off device. Just one second. There are some mixed feelings about these devices. If you, hopefully you've observed this hanging on the side of your house, attached to the side, hopefully not covered with vegetation. And they are required by statute in Florida, not just for their attractiveness, it's actually to perform the function of turning off your irrigation system if it rains. They are set for different amounts, usually a ½ inch of water will set them off. But what we've learned is they really only function for 2 to 3 years at best. And they were never really designed for the intensity of heat we have in Florida. The components break down, but they're quite cheap to replace. And by law in Florida, an irrigation contractor is not supposed to work on your system if this is broken. He's meant to fix that before he does any work on your system. And they do. The one guy I hired not so long ago, when he saw my rain sensor hanging from the eaves of my house, he said, "I'm sorry, I can't fix your valves until you let me fix that rain sensor." And he didn't know where I worked. So these devices, there's a lot more modern ones now, like ET controllers, soil moisture sensors, ones that will have apps for your phone that are very effective to allow you to turn off your irrigation. Even if you're not in the state, you can log in and turn off your system if you see perhaps there's a storm coming or the like. And again, this is a huge message, and we started to notice people taking advantage of this in particular during the recession, actually, when people were looking to save some money, turning off their system once the rainy season comes. On average, in weather in history, in Florida's meteorological history, May 28th is the day. On average, our rainy season starts. And we've had pretty good rainy summers for the past few years. I turned mine off and I think I've watered once since mid-May. So you can save an awful lot of money and a lot of water by just skipping completely and maybe leaving it in the off mode and only turning it on if you're observing the turf grass drying up and really needing a water. Micro irrigation is a way of watering our landscape beds more efficiently. It applies water much more slowly to a bed that's probably established. Even with these zones, if your plants are doing well, especially in the summer, you can turn these off completely and then not water at all. Most of our plants that we're seeing in the nursery these days are well adjusted for growing in our Florida landscapes. So again, turning off your sprinkler ahead of time is my third message there. And think about these smart irrigation controllers that have the phone app. I'm hearing great stories, especially from snowbirds who go back up north, but they want to keep an eye on, because they're in an HOA or something, they want to keep an eye on their irrigation water use. So they can use their camera on their doorbell and look at their yard and go to their phone and turn on their irrigation if it's their watering day. So this technology has been phenomenal to help us control better how we irrigate and save money. A lot of those snowbirds are retirees on fixed budgets, and I have met a lot of them, and they are very motivated not to waste money at all on their landscape. So again, there's multiple kinds. Soil moisture sensor goes in the root zone. It's a little more cumbersome is what I hear. And then the weather-based controller actually can be even predictive in anticipating the likelihood of rain in your area, very sophisticated. And all of these devices have phone apps that allow you to check both the weather and your watering zones. One person I like to quote here is a gentleman in Winter Springs, Art Gallo, who learned about these smart controllers on Good Morning America about 2 years ago, called me, and he wanted to know if anyone else had heard of smart irrigation controllers. I hooked him up with the Hunter rep for his area. He and his neighbor installed smart irrigation controller and wanted to do a pilot test because he's very passionate about this, for a year and report back to the city. This gentleman thought that he was very good about his irrigation and did not over irrigate. He installed it, he started his spreadsheet, he started looking at his monthly water use. He used 77% less water in that first year. It was a summer like this summer, kind of wet, but tremendous water savings. And he had no idea he was overwatering to start with. So he has spoken to city council on numerous occasions. He wants these given away for free in the city. He's working with a state rep right now to rewrite a statute to encourage the use of these devices. So he is our waterless hero. So in 1 year, that was 202,000 gallons he saved. And had he not watched Good Morning America that morning, this would continue for what, another 10 years, 20 years? So and he's one homeowner and he's spreading the word in his community. So again, the important components of this is that he was trained in how to use it, it was installed correctly, and he was able to realize these savings. Those components are important to understand. Moving on then to the landscape. When I talk to a lot of audiences about saving water, everybody says, but if we only all use native species, if we didn't use St. Augustine grass, well, I have yet to see a piece of St. Augustine grass go into a garage and turn on a controller. It's all about the irrigation system. However, if you're going to cut back your water use, you need to have species and plant species that will sustain with less rainfall. So understanding the importance of ground cover, of shade, especially shade, because a lot of times people put in too many trees, have a mandate from their HOA for a certain percentage of turf grass, and have to keep resodding. So shade is wonderful, but be careful because you may have to keep a certain amount of turf grass alive in your system, in your yard. Taking a look at the native species that grow in your area, maybe the palmetto or whatever seems to grow well, is a great way of, say, if you're thinking of expanding your beds. The HOA will usually leave you alone if your yard looks good. So I know I've retrofitted mine. I way exceed the allowance for beds, and I have way less. I think I'm meant to have 70% turf grass, and I maybe have 50, maybe 40, but I try and keep it looking good, so they leave me alone for the most part. So the primary concepts of this water-wise landscaping, just like Florida-friendly landscaping, it's right plant, right place. Choosing something that's appropriate. There's lots of apps out there. The Florida Friendly app is excellent to help you choose plants that will work in sun, shade, soil type appropriate for your area. Reducing your area of turf grass. Very, very important. In the Water Star program, we only allow 60% of the yard to be turf. But there's no reason you can't go beyond that, 50, 40%. Only have appropriate turf grass for your needs. If possible, preserve existing vegetation, existing trees or ground cover. Many of us don't have the choice to do that. The lot has already been cleared. Increase areas of shade, but not too much shade. And then consider, as a really important addition, is adding pollinator-friendly plants to help our butterflies and our bees. There's no reason why the value and function of your yard can't be significant for the area in which you live. Include natives. I know I said that natives aren't going to save water, but there's a lot of benefits for the wildlife, birds, of attracting pollinators and by adding natives that are site appropriate to your area. In the early days of WaterStar, I like to share a story. We had a mandate for a certain percentage of natives. We were seeing cypress trees everywhere. The designers and installers really weren't familiar with native species, and they didn't know where they belonged in the landscape. So they were putting the wrong plant in the wrong place, but they would say it's a native, it belongs here. So you still have to have an understanding of where in the landscape your plant might belong. Making sure that you have site conditions, soil that has been prepared for these native species, not compressed fill dirt from the adjacent stormwater pond, which is sometimes what we have in our areas. Knowing some of the issues we have with natives is the diversity of supply. I do not have a fully native nursery in North Florida without making an appointment on a weekday to go to one. So finding good native nurseries is really important. And finding, if you are hiring someone to help you design, finding someone who knows exactly what they're doing and you're installing it correctly. Some of these plants have very specific needs, so they can thrive then when you install them. One of the best websites I have found is the Native Plant Society. They have a searchable database on their website that is excellent for helping you find species that would be appropriate. So then once you have your landscape is maybe retrofitted or designed to save water, your irrigation system is designed and installed correctly, it's really important to not walk away. Maintenance of the system is important. So water only when needed. Ask for help. Tremendous amount of resources out there. The go-to resource is always your county extension office. And the master gardeners who work there and the extension agents are fabulous to help you. So use that IFAS website also. Turning off your irrigation controller, as I said about 15 times already, when it's raining, you don't need to irrigate. A recommendation I have is to ease into changing your landscape. As soon as you move into your new home in a subdivision with your HOA, don't nuke it all and start over. Slowly add different things and features. On one side, the HOA might not notice you changing it, so do it really slowly, late at night, and they might not notice. And also, you can find out what works better in your area, so don't take it easy when you're doing it. If you're using chemicals in the landscape, read all the instructions. Please use a broom to collect up any fertilizer, pesticides that have leaked out of your spreader, and try to apply the chemicals when it's not raining, not before a heavy storm, and only in on the material that you want to fertilize or and maybe consider just minimizing. And beware, your county may have a ban at certain times of the year on when you can apply chemicals. Watch the weather, wait to water. Yep, 16th time I've said that, but maybe if you take away anything, you'll turn off your irrigation controller. And then maybe, I don't think if you have bugs eating your herbs that they're bad necessarily. I had these big giant caterpillars recently ate all of my parsley, every single bit of it. And I looked it up and it was actually, I think it was the swallowtail caterpillar that loves parsley apparently. So I went and bought more parsley just to feed these caterpillars. Save and reuse your grass clippings, a natural form of fertilizer, and your leaves. Consider, I haven't bought mulch in years. I collect my oak leaves and just spread them in my beds. So it's free mulch. And then enjoy your landscape. It can be, I think we all saw in the last year during COVID, we took a lot more pleasure in our landscapes when we were stuck at home more. So this can be a great way to pass time and enjoy your time. It's very cathartic to work in your landscape. So some of the resources I mentioned, of course, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, the WaterWise landscaping pages on the district's website at sjrwmd.com. Florida Native Plant Society, especially their searchable database. If you want to learn more about irrigation systems and how they work and should be designed, take a look at our floridawaterstar.com website. In the technical manual, tons of information about irrigation, how it should be designed. And then one that I've come across recently and just love is iNaturalist. It's an app for your phone. And I just feel like a genius now. I take picture of anything and it tells me what the name of it is. So, and it stores everything you've taken pictures of with the name, so you can go back and look at it. So if for no other reason than to impress your family and friends, start using iNaturalist. We've actually started using it when we train inspectors in WaterStar. We they might be good with irrigation, they might be good at plumbing, inspecting homes, but trust me, most of them are not good at plant ID. And this thing has been like magic for them. And there's a few other versions of apps to help them, but they can now identify everything correctly, usually in the landscape. So I think that's all I have. Hopefully I didn't speak too fast there. I kind of moved quickly through it all. I'm hoping we have some questions that I can answer.